Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, it's your show.
Okay, in this demo, we'll be showing how to add metrics to the GitLab product, and then we'll add it to the metrics dashboard of the self-monitoring project. Okay, so um, we'll start with sharing my screen. Can everyone see this?
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Yep.
Okay, so normally when you want to instrument something, you'll start by looking at the client libraries. So GitLab uses Ruby on Rails. So normally you would look at the Ruby client library, which is this one. But GitLab uses a fork of this. So you can see that in the gem file. Yeah, this one, Prometheus client mmap. So instead of looking at this, the GitHub page for the client library, we'll look at the one that GitLab uses. I have the link in the doc. Okay, so this is the library that GitLab uses. Here you can see examples of how to use this library. Here counters are created, gauge, histogram, summary. Okay, so so this fork was originally created, I think, because we needed a library that could work with multi-process application servers like Unicorn. So at the top, if you see, it says this Prometheus library is a fork of the Prometheus Ruby client that uses memory mapped files to share metrics from multiple processes. Okay, so that's a brief intro to the Prometheus client library that we use. So what metric should we be adding to the GitLab product that will actually be useful? So one thing that I could think of was measuring the amount of time it takes to process custom dashboards in our backend. So um, the processing happens in here. So this is where the processing happens. As you can see, it calls this, and then it loops through all the stages. Okay, there are multiple stages, and it loops through all of those. So we want to measure this.
So basically,
Okay,
we are measuring we are measuring an action in the UI in GitLab, the app itself, and a user can select more or less any action that you want to measure, any metric that you want, and to instrument it in more or less the same way that you are doing this right now.
right. So I'm basically skipping a few steps here. Normally, you would look at what you want to measure, and then you would hunt down the code that that actually does it. So for example, here what I had done was I had looked at the metrics dashboard and then followed the path from there, look at the API which serves that, then find the code which actually does what you want to measure. So for example, this is the code that serves the metrics dashboard page that you all must be familiar with. So okay, so I'll just show you all the library that we use to make it easier to add metrics and measure stuff. So this is sort of like a helper. This is the one that we want. So this is the Prometheus helper. And you can see there are methods provided to create counters, summary, gauge, histograms. The rest are not important for now. Okay, so let's go back to dashboard-based service. So now we have a choice of the four metric types: a gauge, a counter, summary, and histogram. So we want to measure um, processing time, which can go up or down. So we can't use a counter because counters are supposed to be only something that grows. It cannot be a value that also decreases. So a gauge is possible, but the way you measure it makes it difficult to use a gauge because the way Prometheus works is that an application measures something and serves up a metrics page, and Prometheus periodically scripts it. So if you use a gauge, you'll be uh, measuring values each time a user hits the dashboard endpoint, which is, it can be hundreds of times a second even. So what we want is an average over time. We don't want Prometheus to pick up one value in a minute. We want Prometheus to pick up all the values in that minute. So what we'll use is a summary, which automatically gives you the count of the number of times that you've measured something, as well as the sum. So we can use that to get an average, sum by count. Okay, so let me just. Okay. So this block of code is what we want to measure. Let's use the benchmark library. So this should give us the time and seconds that it took to complete this. So this processor has one characteristic that, if you can see this here, so if dashboard does not exist, it can return nil. And when it does that, it does not actually do any processing. So the amount of time taken will be very low. So just so that we don't skew the average, let's exclude that case. So if dashboard is nil, or if dashboard exists, then we need to observe that value, the processing time value. So before we can do that, we'll need to add the metric. So this method takes two parameters. One is the name of the metric. According to best practices for naming metrics, you should start with the name of the app in which the metric has been added. So that's why I've added GitLab at the start. and the unit is usually at the end. So in this case, let's use milliseconds. And the second parameter is the help string. So it should describe what the metric is measuring. Okay, so let's use this here. The observe method again takes two parameters. First is the labels. I've not defined that as yet, but we'll do that soon. So the value returned by benchmark.realtime is in seconds. So we'll multiply it by 1,000 to get the value in milliseconds. And now we'll define the labels. So let's add two labels. One is for service. That is which service is currently processing this dashboard. And we'll add a label for stages. So this calls the sequence method, which gives an array of stages. Each element in the array is a class. So we'll take the name of that class, split it, take the last bit. So just to give you an example, one of the classes can be, for example, this can be one of the stages. So you can see GitLab, metrics, dashboard, stages. So this is a very long name, and all the stages are under this namespace. So they will all have the same names. So we are only interested in the last one, which is why we are splitting by double colon and then joining it. So when we see the values of the metrics, it'll be clearer. Okay, so we have processing time labels. Okay, so this should give us the metric. I'll start my GDK. So while GDK starts, is anything unclear about this? Any questions?
I think it's okay to me. Maybe while it starts, we'll take the time to, can you pull up the list of the available metrics? Because obviously GitLab itself is already instrumented. So
Yeah.
there is an out-of-the-box metrics not others, the metrics that we've instrumented already in the code, and we ship it to our users. So I guess the first action that the user that would like to instrument GitLab, the first thing is you should go to the documentation and see if this metrics is exposed already and available. Yeah. So that's the list.
Yeah, true. So yeah, so while you're deciding what you want to measure, you would check whether it's already measured. So this is um, the doc which lists all the metrics that we've added. You can find it online. It's quite a big list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'll add it to the doc. And ideally, after adding a new metric, you would add it to this list as well.
Yeah, if you do it like in the product itself before we ship it, like if GitLab is doing that, if as a user you're doing it, you use it
Yeah.
yourself, obviously.
Even if a user adds it to their own GitLab, if they feel like you know uh, pushing it upstream as well, they can do that.
Right, right. We do accept contribution. Actually, we recommend user to send it upstream, and we will gladly accept any contribution of new metrics.
Yeah. Okay, so this has started. So I already have the self-monitoring project created. If you don't have it, you can go to the admin area under monitoring settings, monitoring, and create the self-monitoring project. So before we check this, let's look at the metrics.
Yeah, maybe say a few words about the GitLab self-monitoring, because this is a new feature.
Okay. So recently we added the GitLab Self-Monitoring project, whose goal is to allow users to be able to monitor the GitLab instance itself right out of the box. So they don't have to do anything. They can just go to the admin area, settings, metrics, enable the self-monitoring project, and you know eventually we hope to have multiple dashboards in the self-monitoring project which show you metrics of GitLab itself. Sorry, self-monitoring, and you can create it here.
Mm-hmm.
So
And it acts like any other project that you have, but it is built for monitoring GitLab instance.
right. So we would go to operations metrics to look at the metrics dashboard. But before that, let's look at the metrics. So if you go to the admin area under monitoring and health check, you can get the link to the GitLab metrics page, which Prometheus scrapes. So right now, that metric does not exist because it hasn't been created as yet. So let's open the metrics dashboard so that it gets created.
So it is not created when you define it. It's created only when you invoke an action that will trigger some sort of the response time. And this only then the metric will get exposed to Prometheus, right?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Looks like there was an error. Oh, okay. So right now we are only interested in the API request to get the actual dashboard, which has completed successfully. The other things are not working because Prometheus is not running right now. We'll run that later. So now there should be two metrics here, or it should have run twice. Refresh. Yeah. So if you can see the count here is 2 because I opened the dashboard twice. And we also have the sum. So to get the average, you do sum by count, simple method. Okay, so now I'll just show you all the docs which describe how to monitor your GDK instance with Prometheus. Okay, so you can download the Prometheus binary, then you need to add this config into the Prometheus config file. So I've already done that, but I'll just show you all. This is visible, right? The terminal.
Yeah, we can see the terminal.
Okay. So there's a um, .yaml file here, Prometheus.yaml. And if you can see here at the bottom, here, I've added the configuration for Prometheus to scrape GitLab. So you have the metrics path, you have a token, and you have the target.
But
So just to explain,
do you need to do it also in the not the GDK, like if in a regular GitLab instance?
um, no. If you're using Omnibus, then everything comes automatically set up. There's even a Prometheus instance. But if you're running GitLab from source, then yes,
Okay.
you'll have to set up your own Prometheus,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah,
I
and
think
you'll have to do it.
yeah, I think it's important to emphasize. If you use the official GitLab, you don't need to do that. Prometheus is already installed and set up to scrape the data. This is just for the JDK.
Right. GDK and installations from source.
So from
Omnibus, then you don't need to do anything. Just to explain a bit about this, so the job name, this is the metrics path, which you can see on the health check page. So for example, here you can see the metrics path is /metrics. So that's what we've added here. And this token, again, you can obtain from the health check page. And the target is where your GitLab instance runs. Okay, so we have this config set up. Let's run Prometheus. Okay, so Prometheus is running. Let's check the targets. It hasn't scraped GitLab as yet. So by default, Prometheus scrapes the targets once every minute. You can change it to whatever value you want. Okay, there it has scraped GitLab. So now we should be able to see the metric that we want. Yeah. So here you can see the count and the sum. So let's look at sum by count. Okay, so it's 140 milliseconds currently. Okay, so let's add this to the self-monitoring project. I think I've already added it. Yeah. So I'll just show you the manual configuration. So this is the URL of the Prometheus instance that I have running on my local system. And this is the custom metric. Okay, it's the same thing that I just ran. It's the sum by the count.
Yeah.
And I've added this so that we see each individual service that processes dashboards. Okay, so now this should work. Yeah. So this is the um, current processing time value, 140 milliseconds.
This is the new metric. So by default, we have two charts, web service and API service, and you've added the custom metric that we see here that Prometheus is picking it up and
Right.
later on the dashboard.
So this value that you can see here is from the service label, and currently it's showing the self-monitoring dashboard service. So for example, if you open the system dashboard, or if you open some custom dashboard, you will see those labels as well here. Let's open the dashboard again, just to get some different values. Okay. So the amount of time taken reduced a bit.
Yeah.
So that's how you add a simple metric to measure something that you want to measure.
And if you want to add more, you just click on the add metric button on the upper right side.
Right.
If you have more
So
metrics that are scraped, you just add it here.
yeah. So this is the same UI which I shown just now, the custom metric form. So you can add your metrics. You can also add metrics by creating custom dashboards. So that's also an option. Any questions about this?
I think it's clear to me. Yeah. Before running this.
Yeah, I
Anything?
made some notes. But Reuben, if you have some time, just like last time, I'd really appreciate if you could just go through and see if I missed anything important. If you can add anything to provide more context into those steps, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Awesome, thanks.
I'm going to upload this video, and also I'm going to update the direction page. We have a direction page for the self-monitoring. I'm going to put this video there as well. Hopefully this will help our users and our internal users as well to define and scrape any metrics that they like.
Yeah. And I'll be opening a MR for this. So the metric will actually get added to our data, to our code base. So we can start using the values that it shows us to improve performance.
Cool, great, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, I guess we can end this.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.